Let's prepare ourselves and put your hand over your eyes. I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now just put your hand over your heart and extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that nobody can make you feel inferior unless you give them your consent. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your giving your consent for that to happen. Now, I often say that God can only do for us what God can do through us. And God popularized that particular spiritual truth through the words of Eleanor Roosevelt many years ago. But don't misunderstand this and think that it's a secular teaching. It's a very, very deep spiritual principle. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your giving your consent. I don't actually like this particular spiritual truth because it takes away my excuses. It's not a very warm and fuzzy spiritual truth that we're working with today. But as the master teacher Jesus says, it's the truth that will set you free. The warm, fuzzy stuff comes after you get the truth. But it's the truth that'll set us free. Now here's the thing. I don't, and you don't, actually give our consent consciously for somebody to make us feel inferior. It all comes from the subconscious. It all comes from our asleep place. It all comes from our unconscious giving of it. And most often I give my permission. When I give my permission, what I'm actually doing is telling somebody what I think about myself. It's a reflection of the pictures I have inside of me as to who I am in the world. And sometimes those pictures are none too pretty. Sometimes those pictures that I have inside of myself as to who I am, that I'm portraying out in the world, are actually lies. They're lies that were given to me when I was a very little person very often. And they were given to me often by the people who loved me the most. The mother who was concerned about my weight at a very early age and kept harping on it and harping on it and harping on it. The teacher who tried to help me learn how to conjugate a verb 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and I never could get it. The beloved that would try and make me go out and work in the corporate community when I really wasn't suited to do that because they thought I would make more money and bring it back home. See, those are the kinds of things that if you hear those negative images over and over and over again, you're going to start making up stories about who you are. You're going to make up those lies that say, I'm not whole, perfect, and complete. I'm a person who has failure, and with that failure comes shame very often. Well, I'm in a series right now. I'm in part 3 of what will be a 4-part series on the ravages of shame. It's a book based on a book by a woman named Brené Brown, and it's called I Thought It Was Just Me, But It Isn't. Making the journey from what will people think to I am enough. And basically her premise is that most of us on the planet are walking around with unhealed shame. And when we're walking around with unhealed shame, we run the risk of the ravages. The ravages of unhealed shame are this. You walk around with a big sign that says, hit me, right on your forehead. And there are plenty of people on the planet who don't feel good about themselves enough yet that will take up the bat and just crack one right over your head. And it's not only those people out there, but it's the person inside of you that will also take up that bat and take a few whacks at your unhealed shame. But the biggest problem with unhealed shame is the fact that we forget who we are, that we are the presence and the power of God on this planet. That's the worst part of unhealed shame, is we don't know who we are, that we're representations of God. It's not God and us, but God as us. Now look, for those of you visiting, that's a new concept. It's a hard concept we can't even wrap our head around how big God is. But what we know is that God is all of us. We know that intellectually. When we remove some of the shame, we can start to feel it. We can start to come from it. And believe me, the world is a much better place when we come from our divinity in our life. Well, remember, each week we've talked about this notion that you can't prevent shame until you've healed every aspect of your life. Now, the truth is, that should be our goal. Our goal should be to keep healing little aspects of our lives. But until that happens, you can develop what is called shame resilience. Shame resilience is that condition that you have when you're experiencing shame, your cheeks get red, your blood pressure goes up, you're feeling small on the planet, and when you have shame resilience, you recognize, oh, that's what's happening right now. What's happening on the outer, because that's what's happening on the inner. So how can I look at this in a different way? That's what shame resilience is. Now, the last 2 weeks, we've talked about some strategies to develop shame resistance. Those are on the tape out there, or you can go online and just download them for free. Today, we're going to start with the second element of shame resilience, which is the development of what Brown calls critical awareness. We would call it conscious awareness or awake awareness. See, all of us know that awareness is knowing what exists. That's what awareness is. We know something exists. Critical awareness, conscious awareness, knows why it exists, how it exists, who's contributing to its existence. We need to know all of that kind of thing in order to develop shame resilience. We need to be able to increase our understanding by not only looking at our personal, individualized shame, but how society is feeding into it, how politics are feeding into it, how economics are feeding into that kind of shame. She says shame works like this. It works like a zoom lens on a camera. When we're feeling individualized shame, the zoom lens zooms right in on us, and all we can see is our own shame. When we see critical awareness, the zoom comes back out, and we can see the factors that are contributing to that shame. And in doing that, we are able to get some power. We're able to see shame triggers in our lives. So, for example, take body image, because I think body image is a universal shame that many of us have, both men and women, young and old. We all have that kind of, we tend to have that kind of shame around body image. And so if we look at, well, what gave us this shame around body image? Is it just me? Well, first we see, no, it's not just me. And how did I get it? The body image industry. The body image industry contributed significantly to this kind of thing by keeping us buying stuff and engaged in their industry. Just a few statistics. $38 billion each year is spent in the United States on the hair industry. $33 billion on the diet industry. $24 billion on skincare industry. $18 billion on the makeup industry. $15 billion on the perfume industry. $13 billion on cosmetic surgery industry. 81% of 10-year-old girls have dieted at least once. And lest you think it's only for women, let me just say that $50 billion was spent on skin lightening products. The major consumer of skin lightening products are Indian men. See, the diet industry the body image industry has a lot to do with how it is that we feel about ourselves. And it's not just about body. Remember the 12 areas of shame that we talked about. Parenthood. So many of us have shame about how we were parented or how we have parented. Money, work, mental and physical health, sex, aging, religion, being stereotyped and labeled, speaking out, surviving human trauma. See, just having this awareness gives us power. It gives us power. Knowledge is power. When we have this kind of awareness, it'll assist us in running down that rabbit hole of shame. We may go down it, but not quite so fast. Brown calls this contextualizing. When we look at the big picture, what society is bringing to us, what economics are bringing to us, she calls it contextualizing instead of individualizing our shame. That we can look at the big picture. Understanding how the industry benefits does not mean that our shame will go away, but identifying the context of it will help us develop some shame resilience practices. See, for instance, you look at a magazine cover and you see a beautiful person on the magazine cover. If you know that that's not how that woman looks in real life, her teeth have been whitened, her legs have been made longer by the computer, her hair has been made whatever. That's not how that person is. When we can begin to see that and begin to notice that, we have a little power of our own. Now look, the important thing here though is we don't want to get this mixed up. We are spiritual people who believe in taking 100% responsibility for ourselves. So we don't want to use contextualizing as an excuse in our life. We don't want to blame anybody. It's not about shirking our responsibility. It's actually about taking more responsibility. See, we don't want to say, oh, I can't find a job because I'm a woman. Oh, I can't get my credit card debt under control because the companies keep sending me credit cards. No. Those bad credit card companies. No. We're not shirking our responsibility here. What we're doing is, instead of blaming the system, we're looking at the system and seeing where we fit into it. See, because when we get that at a deep level, it increases our personal power. We stop blaming the victim. And here, if there was no other reason on the planet to stop with shame, it's this idea of not blaming the victim. And those of us in metaphysics, we need to take this very, very seriously, because you've probably either heard yourself or heard of a story of, oh, what's in her consciousness? Oh, their consciousness isn't very elevated. We have to stop that. We have to just stop all of that. See, because we're in all of this together. And until I clean my shame up and I help everybody I can clean their shame up, we haven't done our work here that God has sent us to do. See, we want to stop this other stuff. Oh, it's their fault. Oh, it's the other people. You know, when we take into contextualizing what is happening to some people, we have to understand racism exists. Homophobia exists. Sizeism exists. Ageism exists. Economic difficulties for divorced women, that exists. See, we want to look at all of that with compassion and with oneness. This church is built on oneness. There's only one of us here in this room. We're all sprinkled out in different meat suits. We have different colors. We have different hairstyles. Some nobody hair at all. We have all that going on. But at the essence, there's only one of us. And if we can stop the otherness, we'll begin to stop a lot of the shame. So the first one is for us to kind of stop the whole notion of shame by contextualizing. The second one is for us to reach out. Now, last week we talked about reaching out ourselves. Sometimes we're in the shame soup and somebody throws us a lifeline and we take it, and sometimes we're in the shame soup and we need to throw a lifeline. I want to talk about us throwing the lifeline today. I want to talk about us reaching out and not otherizing people, but saying, that's me right over there, no matter what it is that we're hearing. Because when we can do that, we can really improve this whole world. You know, one of the greatest ways that we have shame is around our families of origin. We do. It's how they're constructed, how they've behaved. We try and hide that. What Brown says is when we can begin to work with our own family of shame around our own shame, then we're more open to throwing a lifeline to other people. Let me read one little comment that she has here, a little story from a person she interviewed. My dad's wife is younger than I am, and my mom's new boyfriend has been married 6 times. My family is ridiculous. We're supposed to be comfortable with that, and that's supposed to be okay because all families are crazy. Well, that only works if you're around other people who talk openly about their families being crazy. When you're around people who pretend their families are perfect, it's not okay. In fact, it's very shameful because they judge you based on your crazy family members. You try to avoid the discussion and start talking about something else. When I see people admit something about their weird family and someone starts judging them and saying bad things, I jump right in. I start talking about my family. If we all told the truth, no one would feel like they were the only one with a screwed up family. I try to help in this situation because I've been there, and it's really, really lonely. I think it's a powerful story because, you know, each of us, in wherever we're going, whether we're in our workplace, you know, we need to know that each one of us have ministries. When you're a part of the Center for Spiritual Awareness, you have a ministry. And that ministry is walk the walk and talk and the love of God on the planet. And so, yeah. Sometimes when we go out, it would actually be helpful in our workplaces if you see somebody or you hear somebody talking about their family, try and talk about it with them. Try and let them know about your family. See, not only is it make us more honest, which is a powerful, powerful quality of God. Honesty is a powerful quality of God. But not only that, it gives our connections a deeper, deeper tone with everybody. See, we're founded on oneness. We're founded on oneness, not on otherness. She tells a story in this book, and I will just say that we're sold out of the books, but we have little pieces of paper out there. If you haven't gotten the book, I encourage you to get this book. It's chock full of stories. It's got great ideas for strategies around shame. So you can get a little piece of paper out there and order it online from Amazon or wherever you order your books. She tells a little story about a woman named Jennifer and a woman named Tiffany. Jennifer is a woman who moved into a new neighborhood, and she didn't know anybody in the neighborhood, but her son got to be friends, first grader, got to be friends with another son in the first grade. And so she met the mother, and she said, I never got very deep with this woman, but, you know, I met her, and she's probably the person I talk to the most in my neighborhood. She said, well, Jennifer said one day her mother called her, and her sister, Carly, was back in rehab for alcoholism. And the next weekend was going to be a family weekend for all the family to come to the rehab center. And the mother said, can you and your husband come to this? And she said, of course, we'll be there. Well, she didn't have a place for her son. She'd never left her son overnight before. So she goes to this neighbor, Tiffany, and says to Tiff, can I leave my son with you? And she said, sure. She said, what's up? And she said, my sister is going back into rehab, and it's family night and family weekend, we need to be there. And she said, your sister? How many sisters do you have? And she said, I just have one, it's Carly. She said, you met Carly? Oh, of course I met Carly. She's an alcoholic? Why, she's so sweet and she's so nice. And she has a little girl. What does her husband think? Well, she doesn't have a husband. Oh my gosh, she doesn't have a husband. She goes on and on and on. And but she takes the kid, and then 2 weeks later, Tiffany and Jennifer are taking their kids to school. At the same time, they pull up the school, and a woman is face down over her steering wheel, passed out. And so they find out she's not passed out from a heart attack. She's passed out because she's drunk. And Jennifer just starts crying because she knows the ravages of alcoholism and how hard that must be for the woman and her family. But Tiffany is all about the gossip and all about just going crazy over this. And so now I want to, here's what happened. And Jennifer never backed down. She never otherized that woman. She never said, look, if that woman had a heart attack and was face down over her thing, we'd all be making casseroles. We'd be driving her kids to school. We'd be helping out in every way she could. But see, we have this idea that some people deserve our support around their shame, and other people, no, they don't deserve our support around their shame. We've got to end that, because that's separate thinking. It's duality thinking, and that's not what we're about. We're about oneness thinking in our life. So let me just read to you. So then a couple of months go by, and she's kind of distanced herself from Tiffany because, she doesn't want anything to do with her. So one morning, almost 6 months later, Tiffany called Jennifer. She was crying so hard that her voice was barely audible. Jennifer ran to Tiffany's house. The front door was open, and Jennifer walked in. Tiffany was sitting on the kitchen floor sobbing. I was sure someone had died. I sat down next to her and asked her what happened. Tiffany looked at Jennifer and said, I'm not perfect. I'm really not. My life is as messed up as everyone else's, I swear. I must have looked shocked because she said, yes, I said the F word. I didn't say the F word, but she said That's right. I'll say it again. Then she just started sobbing even harder. Jennifer held Tiffany and said, I know you're not perfect. Trust me, it's fine. It's even better than fine. It's great. They both laughed a little, and then Jennifer said that Tiffany turned toward her, held both of her hands, and reached out in the most powerful way. Tiffany explained to Jennifer that she really didn't understand. Tiffany explained that she didn't even know her father. She had never seen or met him. She told Jennifer that her mother didn't visit because Tiffany was too ashamed of her, so she didn't invite her. Tiffany said she doesn't have normal problems like the kind you and Amber laugh about. She's poor. She's missing teeth. She doesn't speak like us. I didn't grow up in a neighborhood like this. No matter what I did growing up, no matter how good my grades were or how hard I worked to dress nice, I was still bad. That's the ravages. That's the ravages of shame. And chances are each and every one of us in this room have some area in our life where we've held it down so far and so long that we don't ever want to share it. I'm telling you, to develop shame resilience, to develop a closer walk with God, we not only have to become sharers of our shame, but we have to become listeners of shame. And sometimes that can be even harder, to listen to someone's shame. We feel so uncomfortable. She tells another story in here where a young girl was killed in an automobile accident, and at her funeral, the church was filled with people. The child's friends and the mother's friends, everybody was there at the funeral. Then 6 months later, the woman she interviewed, her son had hung himself. He committed suicide. And there was hardly anybody in the church. And nobody came from her work. And she was so upset about it. She asked her friends, she said, why didn't you come to Benny's funeral? And what they told her was this: we thought under the circumstances that it should be a private matter, that you wouldn't want us there. See, we have to bust that out, you and I, and we can. The 300 people in this church this morning can put that kind of thing to rest. How do we do that? We do that by the courage that we've learned how to do. We take that courage and that compassion and that connection, and we take it out of the mind and we take it out of the heart and we put it into action wherever we go. Whether it's in the workplace or the restaurant or just wherever you find yourself, be open to someone sharing their life so that we can share our life back with them. You know, my goal, my desire would be that we wouldn't have to do this hard work, that we wouldn't have to do the digging, that we could just live by affirmation alone. I would love to live by the affirmation that says there is only one life. That life is perfect. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. There is only one life. That life is perfect. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. I would love for each of us to just live by that. But we can't. We have to live by that. We have to work with that. We have to keep working with that. But we also have to do the shoveling out. You know, I love what Mary Morrissey, I can't think who it was, she said it. The great masters don't have anything we don't have. They have great love inside. The difference is they don't have anything else. It's the anything else we got to let go of. We can do it with shame resilience. Now this message, we have one more week, and we're not going to do it next week because Reverend Betsy's going to bring us a beautiful, beautiful message next week. But then the following week, come back because we're going to finish up with this shame resilience. We've got some more good strategies. Let's take this message into prayer, knowing that there's only one power. It's the power of love. It's in us. It's around us. It's through us. It's everywhere. Love is who we are. We're going to get to that. Just let it go out. Just let it reach, seep out of every pore. Every step we take is love step. I give thanks for this. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is. Yeah.